Our top story at this hour. In a move to amplify its nuclear arsenal, reports reveal that China is working to build more than 100 silos. The construction for more than 100 new silos for Beijing's intercontinental ballistic missiles has already begun in its northwestern desert. Satellite images obtained by researchers show a grid covering hundreds of square miles in China's Gansu province. There are nearly 119 identical construction sites which are said to have features similar to China's existing launch facilities. And as of now, China has a stockpile of 250 to 350 nuclear weapons. The number of new missiles intended for those silos is unknown. What is expected is that China is using the silos to store its DF-41 missiles. DF-41 ICBMs have an operational range of 12,000 to 15,000 kilometers. The silos' aim is to ensure that the survival of the weapons and delivery systems can be maintained. The Chinese Navy has also introduced new nuclear weapons-capable submarines to its growing fleet. Using similar strategy, the US has developed a plan to move these across a grid of silos during the Cold War. This was done to make sure that Soviet war planners could not locate the missiles at any given time. The discovery follows recent warnings by the Pentagon officials. In April, the commander of the U.S. Strategic Command, Admiral Charles Richard, called the buildup of Chinese nuclear capability a breathtaking expansion. In a report published last year, the U.S. Department of Defense had mentioned China's evolving nuclear deterrence ambitions. It said that as China expands and modernizes its nuclear forces, China's nuclear warhead stockpile is projected to at least double in size over the next decade, and that China is moving to a launch-on-warning posture with an expanded silo-based force. For a better understanding of this news development, we are now being joined by international affairs expert Greg Swenson, who is joining us from London. Greg, thanks so much for joining us on WION at this hour. Now, in the midst of strained ties with the US, China seems to be building 100 new missile silos. So is China seeking to expand its nuclear capabilities?
Yes, well, one would hope that they are just using this as a decoy strategy by building these silos. They do have a relatively modest nuclear arsenal of, as you mentioned, 250 to 350 nuclear warheads. But any escalation and any buildup by the Chinese should be worrisome. Now, granted, the U.S. has many more nuclear warheads, and between the U.S. and the Russians, there's about 11,000. It's still troublesome that the Russian military has over 3,500 warheads. But any escalation with China should be worrisome, coming on the heels of the border clashes with India, the South China Sea takeover, the Belt and Road debt trap that's being exposed now, and also the cyber theft of intellectual property from the U.S. and other Western nations. So this should be worrisome. It's probably not a crisis yet because of the modest numbers, but it's definitely worrisome.
Right. Greg, my final question for you. How will this development impact how the world sees China at a time when the country has alienated the West?
It's a great point. Look, the human enslavement in China, the genocide against the Uyghurs, the assault on freedom. All these things are very worrisome to the West. I think in the last administration you saw some exposure of that, and it was brought to the attention of the West. That's why you saw Huawei equipment being rejected by other Western nations, notably the UK. And so I think that, it's a start, and I think that the current administration is continuing with its, shall we say, distrust of the Communist Party, of the CCP. This is not anything against the Chinese people. Remember, it's only 95 million people that are members of the CCP, and they're ruling over 1.4 billion people. So, look, I think this is a good sign that the West is showing unity against the expansionary nature of the Chinese, and I think that's a good sign. And you saw that in the G7 2 weeks ago.
Right, Greg, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for all your inputs, and thank you for joining us from London at this hour. WION World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.